Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another riveting episode of If Margaritas Could Talk, the Over 40 Chronicles podcast. I am your host, Tracy Black, and today we are talking to the up-and-coming comedian Charity Jones and her journey from fear to fun. So grab a margarita or your beverage of choice, and let's welcome Charity Jones to the podcast, everybody. Welcome, Charity.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
How are you doing?
I'm great.
For those listeners out there, Charity is an up-and-coming comedian from the Oklahoma area whose career started in 2020, right before COVID, of course, then returning in 2024. She is working her way up through the comedy scene and most recently was featured at the Gotham Comedy Club in New York City, which of course is incredible. So first off, I wanted to congratulate you on taking this brave journey. I would love to know sort of what inspired you to get into comedy in the first place. Was there a specific moment when you knew that this is what you wanted to do?
Well, I've always had a love for the stage. Growing up, I was, in theater and choir and always wanting to have the microphone. But now I was working for a nonprofit and went to a local establishment to set up a fundraiser. Took a couple girlfriends with me, and they were having an open mic night, and they wouldn't stop pressuring me to get on stage. And so I said, well, I'll try it. So I got up there and told a funny story that I had told at Girls' Night Out a few times and knew that they all enjoyed it. So I tried it on the microphone, and it was a hit. And I kind of caught the fever, and the adrenaline of the stage, can be addictive. So that was it. That's all it took.
That's a good thing. I'm such a huge fan of comedy, so I'm so happy that you're here because I guess I've been pretty lucky. I've seen some great acts, in person and of course on TV. Question to you: who were some of your biggest comedy influences over the last couple of years, or even growing up?
Well, I would have to say I was telling this story to somebody the other day that I can remember listening to George Carlin on vinyl. But his 13 words you can't say on TV or whatever. Back then there was no internet and, that episode wasn't allowed to be aired on TV. And so we would listen to it on a vinyl. And so that's fun to, reminisce about and think about now. Other comedians that have influenced me, I love Wanda Sykes. She's always a hit. Always a hit. I love the quirkiness of Steve Martin and Eddie Murphy, legend.
Legend.
Robin Williams. More recently, actresses and comedians kind of crossed lines, but I consider Melissa McCarthy a comedian.
Amazing. She's amazing. Yeah.
Love her. Love her. I would say it's a mix of male and female. Gaffigan's great.
Oh, I think about Netflix. Like probably majority of my time I spend watching comedy.
Yeah.
You get into series and you're like, it's okay, I guess. But then you get into comedy. I love laughter in my life. So I can appreciate your journey and taking it from beginning to where you are now. I wanted to talk about your first time on stage. You talked about this fundraiser. How did it go for you? Like, how were you feeling in that moment when you were, here I am, and not knowing really what the response was going to be?
Well, the time between actually putting my name down on the list and getting up to the stage, I thought I was going to throw up. I thought, yeah, sure, I could do this, fine. And then it was like, oh no, it's almost my turn. But it's a very supportive environment, usually an open mic. And especially if it's your first time, everybody's encouraging and supportive. And I feel like if you most open micers have a beginner's luck, your first couple sets, or sometimes your best for a while, just because you have all of that energy and adrenaline and, the audience can feel that. They can feed off of that energy. And so, and you're smiling, you're happy to be there, later down the road, you're exhausted and you force yourself to do it because that's what you've committed to for the night. And you don't have that same energy all the time. So I felt like the first time I was really, really nervous, but it was an amazing experience. It was a really good set and opportunity. And I felt like the crowd loved it. And I ended up getting a booking from it. A friend of mine recorded it and sent it to someone over here in Tulsa. And he watched it and put me on a storyteller show. And so that was my first real gig. And that was on a Saturday, and then the country shut down on Wednesday. So it took me a little while to get back at it. Yeah, I thought, I'm going to be big. I'm going to go do my dreams, and then we all stayed home in sweatpants for a couple years.
Well, you got a lot of time to practice in your sweatpants. That's for sure.
Yeah.
As a newer comedian, what I wanted to know from you is, like, breaking into the scene, what are some of the challenges? Because, of course, it's been a year now that you've been at it. And what are some of the, the challenges that come into, like, breaking into the scene? Does being a female have any impact on that either?
At first, it's easy because you don't know the drama of the scene. You don't know the relationships, and everyone's welcoming. And as you get further in, to me, it's just very important to keep my authenticity. I feel like the further you get in, the more influenced, and, it's not even a negative thing. You might love someone else's comedy and then change your style a little because, you like theirs. And there's nothing wrong with that, but it's hard. You just need to stay yourself, and it's hard to not perform to the other comedians that you want to be in their group. There's lots of cliques, just like all of life, We like to think of that as in high school, but it happens in business and corporate, and it happens everywhere we go. There's always, formed relationships and packs of people in society. And so, it's hard to not shape your comedy to please different groups.
Right. I can imagine that's probably a little bit difficult. Do you find that there's some industries that are a male-dominated industry? Do you find that that's part of sort of the clickiness of it? There's a male domination. I'm just sort of thinking outside the box. When you look at some of the bigger stars that are out there, and then someone up and coming is new, and we want to you want to pave that way for somebody to come in. But, some people are, it's mine. And
there's a lot of gatekeeping.
Yeah, gatekeeping. Perfect word for it. Yeah.
There's a saying that everyone should do great, but just not better than them, And it's hard to keep that positive attitude and not be a gatekeeper, and it's a hard balance between, sharing your networking success and your connections. That's great. But then there's also having to put in your own work. So there's a balance there. I feel like I try to help everyone and provide them the opportunities or the knowledge for the opportunities. I share festival entries online, and I texted a couple comedians today and said, did you get your submission in for the festival coming up? Price is going up tomorrow. So things like that. It's very male dominated. They tend to put their male buddies on their shows, no matter if they're really that funny, I mean, it happens, but the only way to combat it is just to be better.
Well, that's just it. And so you just got to get out there and slay it, for sure.
And I'm not saying I'm there, but that's the name of the game, is to get the laughs. So it doesn't really matter what crowd you're in. And that's something, you have to keep your eye on the prize. You can't get wrapped up in who's popular and getting on these shows because they're, trying to be friends with someone to get on their shows. You just got to go back to the writing book and write.
Well, then I think too, like the networking element of it, I think there's a lot of that. Because again, you're treating this as a business. Yes, it's great. And if it's your passion and you want to do it from a passion perspective, whatever your intention is behind it, I'm trying to make my way in because I'm a funny person and it works out, and you have this natural humor and this natural, really good aura about you, but it steps on some people's toes. And, sometimes men don't really want to step aside when there's a lady that comes in could be potentially funnier than them. All right. So there's probably that ego, adjust that little bit of ego. So I wanted to ask you, could you sort of describe for me and for our listeners what your comedic style is? Are you sort of like a one-liner, observational humor, storytelling? I'd like to know more about your style of comedy.
I naturally lean more to storytelling. I've started a new comedy workbook though I just love, and it has lots of writing prompts and lots of writing formulas that are structured to turn stories into jokes. And so it kind of mixes the storytelling element with the premise, setup, punchline structure. So I've been going back to my stories here in this last week and trying to reformulate them into this new structure, and it works. It has been killing. I've done this set 3 times this week, and every night has been amazing. There's just always things to learn. I've always enjoyed learning, and I feel like even in comedy, from the business side and the writing side to the stage presence to the acting, there's just so much to learn. It's exciting.
That's super exciting. And it's really funny because you look at Jerry Seinfeld, right? When they did his documentary, had this vault of years and years and years and years of jokes. And he would lay them out on the floor. He was walking through this set. I did this set at this comedy club. I did, this one bombed and I had to readjust it. It's a funny thing because you think from a comedy perspective that it's just naturally just rolls off the tongue, but there is a bit of a process to it, correct?
Yes.
Especially if you want to keep everything on trend, because you're meeting a different need for the audience. Somebody who's my age has such an appreciation, and probably older has an appreciation for comedy. But my son, he's 26 and he doesn't really like comedy, but him and his girlfriend went out to a comedy club in Victoria. I thought you said he didn't like comedy. He goes, well, she wanted to go, so I had to go. I said, well, did you like it? He goes, I don't know. And so the younger generation, are they warming up to comedy? And, one of the things I wanted to ask you is, what is the current state of comedy? Is there any trends that you're excited about or things that you can see that might be different from what your expectations were?
Are you ready to add a little sparkle to your life? Let me introduce you to Kindred Fusion, the ultimate destination for permanent jewelry. That's right, no more worrying about clasps or losing your favorite pieces. With Kindred Fusion, you can enjoy beautiful, seamless jewelry that is as unique as you are. Imagine a stunning bracelet or necklace that feels like a second skin. Sounds amazing, right? At kindredfusion.com, you can explore a gorgeous selection of styles that fit every personality and occasion. So head on over to kindredfusion.com today and discover the magic of permanent jewelry.
I don't know what my expectations were coming in, but I feel like as a woman and being older, there's a lot of young people in the scene. Now, maybe not so much in the audience, but at the open mics and on stage, and there's a lot of young comedians, and it seems to be the trend to do dark humor or degrading humor for a while first. And that's kind of what I was alluding to about fitting in and performing for others. The down punching is really heavy, it seems like. And I didn't expect so many people to not want to bring a positive attitude to the audience. We're there to entertain, to provide laughter and joy. At least that's how I feel about it. And so that part has been hard to deal with a little bit because, once you're our age, we know we're in charge of what we expose ourselves to, and that we're the only ones that can control what our minds absorb. And, and things that we hear affect us. They affect our emotions and our day. And so there's sometimes that I don't enjoy hearing some things through comedy. And I feel like anyone that gets to that professional level, but they understand that business side, that you can't ostracize your audience, 50% of your audience. And there's some comedians that still downpunch women or downpunch a minority and it's hard in this day and age, this climate where we have free speech and it's misconstrued to, I should say what's on my mind. Like some things shouldn't be said, but we have influences that get away with saying derogatory things every day, And so I feel like there is this climate of we can say whatever we want because we're allowed to, and I don't think anyone should be censored. I just think that they should have the mindset that they want to bring joy to their audience,
It's interesting that you bring that up because, of course, you look at Dave Chappelle, right? He's taken a lot of backlash for hitting communities in the gut, like LGBTQ plus. It's comedy, and there's such a sensitivity around so many topics. But I agree with what you're saying. It's the younger generation. Things are probably a little more different. And you and I, our generation appreciate having like the good old humor and the Norm Macdonald's. My husband and I recently saw Joe Coy. So I don't know if you've ever heard of him, and he is amazing. So we saw him in Seattle. And I was just floored. I think I left there with my face and my stomach hurting because we'd laughed the entire time. And I have such a, appreciation for anybody who has the guts to just get up and be so vulnerable in that way, because I certainly couldn't do it. Oh my gosh. So here's a question for you. If you had to be stuck in an elevator with a comedian, dead or alive, who would it be?
Oh my goodness. Probably Robin Williams. Yeah.
He left such a legacy. I just the other day I was watching, I think up on the TV came Mork and Mindy. Do you remember the show Mork and Mindy? Yes. That's so old. It's so vintage. When you're a kid and you're watching it, it was funny. And then as an adult, you're watching, you're like, I'm not sure of the show. It's so different as you get older. So you kind of view things a little differently. I wanted to ask you if there's any advice that you would give somebody, young, old, doesn't really matter, who wants to try stand up for the first time. What kind of advice you would give?
To just do it. Don't wait until you feel like you have the best material. You're not, and it's okay. You're going to be nervous, but like I was saying, those nerves are going to benefit you on stage. So don't do it because you're going to be so nervous. It brings that adrenaline that the audience can feed off of. Yeah. And always be writing. Anytime you think of something funny, write it down, make a note in your phone, take observations of everyday life, use things from your life. Most things are tragic. Most funny things on stage deal with some kind of tragedy or some kind of hardship or a rant, something you don't like, or there's a lot of passion, you could like it, but, so just start with you, talk about yourself, start with what you look like, or start with, if you hate dating, or if you're a single mom and you're tired of raising kids by yourself, start with a hardship and go from there, or an observation of something, but just do it. Get on an open mic. Most open mics are 4 or 5 minutes. You don't have to finish. If you get up there and you only do 2 minutes and you get a laugh, that's great. Even if you get up there and don't get a laugh, the audience is usually so supportive. It's usually full of other comedians struggling just like you. And you'll find out if you go. I like to go to a mic and watch the first time. I still do that. If I'm going to go somewhere new, I'll go the week before, watch, look up, check out the scene, and then go back and do it the next week. So go and observe and see what it's like, and then put your name down. Go for it.
So part of your creative process, I would say, so if you've got new jokes that you're sort of something's popped into your brain, do you experiment by talking to coworkers and your family and throwing new jokes at them and saying just off the whim, right? Off the cuff and see what kind of response you get? What's your testing formula? Or do you just wing it?
I kind of do both. Open mics are a great place to practice. Yes, it's always best to bounce it off somebody that that's not a comedian. A comedian's always going to critique you, which is great when you're working on your writing and you really want to be critiqued. But sometimes you just want to get a real example if somebody's going to laugh or giggle when you tell them, and their expression. You can always read body language better than anything. Well, and you can't fake a true laugh.
You know what's funny with me? For years, I was never a joke teller because I can never remember the punchline, ever. Even as a kid, you tell the stupidest joke, the knock jokes. And then when my kids were little, I would do the jokes on them because they thought it was really funny and they would really laugh. But then later on in life, I tried a few and it just didn't land. So I knew that wasn't for me. So where can people find you next? What's kind of coming down the pipe for you? Do you have shows booked? What about projects, things like that? When are we going to see you come to Canada? That's the real question.
Ooh, I would love to come to Canada. Canada has been on my list for a long time. Yes. I do have some things coming up. It seems like every day there's a new little bite of something. But next week I'll be in Wilmington, North Carolina. I'm doing a retirement party. A friend of mine has retired from the Marines after 27 years. Her last day was just this week. And the ceremony is at Camp Lejeune, and then the reception where I'll be doing the entertainment is there in Wilmington. So that'll be fun. And then next, I'll be in San Antonio at the end of March, doing an all-female comedy festival, 4-day festival.
Fantastic.
Yes, that's going to be fun. That'll be at Upstage Lounge there in San Antonio. And then while I'm there, I'm picking up another mic over at Laugh on the Rocks. And then in April, I've got some things coming. And I may be brave enough to post on YouTube soon. I feel like the vulnerability on stage is different than vulnerability on the internet.
Isn't that the truth? It's a different world, right? Because the video aspect of things, yeah, I feel your pain. I feel it more than you know. I had another couple of little questions here I wanted to talk to you about. Let's talk a little bit about your life outside of comedy. What does that look like for you? Career-wise, just so that, you know what, I'm sure there's up-and-coming comedians that are hopefully get an opportunity to listen to our podcast today, and maybe they will be influenced if they have it sort of sitting in the back of their mind and they're like, well, I have a full-time job. Well, you can do both.
You can.
I do 5 things, you can do both. We can do hard things.
I tell myself that all the time. I raised twins. I can do this.
Of course.
Yes, I work full-time. I'm a speech pathologist, speech therapist. I work with kids and adults, do a little bit of medical, work at the hospital some, and do some outpatient rehab and then some pediatrics. And then, sometimes I come home, change clothes, throw on some lipstick, feed the dogs, and head out to the comedy club. And I get home about 10 o'clock and get up the next day and do it again.
Do it again. That's so fantastic. I'm just over the moon happy for you. I wanted to do a quick faster blaster round with you. So you get 5 questions, 30 seconds to answer, and I will give you the question. You have to, off the top of your head, just choose whatever. Okay?
Okay.
Here we go. Coffee, tea, or something stronger?
Stronger.
Of course.
I'm excited about that one.
What's the last song that got stuck in your head?
It's inappropriate.
Okay, never mind. Oh, it's a PG, folks. This is PG. If you could have dinner, that's okay. If you could have dinner with a historical figure, who would it be?
Oh, Dolly Parton.
Dolly Parton. Okay. What's one thing on your bucket list?
Oh, a yacht in Greece.
Yes. I love it. That. And number 5, of course, what's your favorite margarita flavor?
Oh, I just like it on the rocks with salt. Give me top shelf.
Ooh, top shelf. I'm liking it already. Well, I am super, super grateful for you taking the time today to meet with me and, of course, our audience. I wanted to just appreciate you and your journey and wish you nothing but the best of luck. I get an opportunity because you're on my podcast. So when you make it big, I'll be front row. Don't you worry. You just can't heckle me.
You don't heckle me.
So that's all for today's episode of If Margaritas Could Talk. I would like to thank you, Charity Jones, for taking the time to meet with us today. You can check her out and find her upcoming shows and more at Charity Jones Comedy on the Gram and Facebook. Thank you so much for tuning in, and don't forget to join us next week as I break down my new book, New Year, New Me, The Let Me Method. If you do have something to add, please drop us a comment or send a message. We'd love to hear from you. Until next time, keep laughing, keep living, and remembering, if life gives you lemons, make a margarita. Please follow, like, or buy us a coffee on your favorite listening platform. We can also be found at ifmargaritascouldstalk.com, #podcastdiva. Cheers, everybody, and thank you so much, Charity Jones.
Thank you, Tracy.
Have a good day. Bye.
Bye-bye.